The message
Focus
arrived at
fire
the
on the lead
Galactic
vessel
Council
and reroute
chamber on the
auxiliary
fourth
power to
rotation
shield.
of the
We
siege.
can't let them breach our defenses.
It was not expected. It was not wanted. And yet, High Chancellor Vorith stood before the assembled representatives of 47 species, holding a data crystal that glowed faintly in his six-fingered hand, and knew that desperation had finally consumed reason. "They answered," he said. The chamber fell silent. Even the Clithera, whose respiratory systems produced a constant whistling hum, seemed to hold their breath. Counselor Zafina of the Erythian Collective leaned forward, her silver eyes wide with disbelief. "The humans?" she whispered. Vorith nodded slowly. His twin hearts beat unevenly, a biological response to stress his species had not evolved to suppress. "Yes. The transmission we sent into the quarantine veil 13 cycles ago. They have responded." A wave of murmurs rolled through the chamber. Some voices carried relief. Others carried horror. Humans. For 10,000 standard years, the species called Homo sapiens had been sealed behind the quarantine veil, their solar system wrapped in a network of warning beacons and gravitational inhibitors that prevented faster-than-light travel. The Council had placed them there after the first survey, a single reconnaissance mission that had returned with data so disturbing, so fundamentally incompatible with galactic civilization, that the Council had voted unanimously to isolate Earth forever. The humans were dangerous. Not because of their technology, which had been primitive at the time. Not because of their weapons, which were crude and chemical-based. But because of what they were. Because of how they thought. The survey report had been clear: humans possess no natural armament, no venom, no exoskeleton, no psionic capability. They are physically weak compared to most spacefaring species. However, they exhibit three traits that make them incompatible with galactic society: first, an irrational attachment to individuals outside their genetic line. Second, a willingness to endure extreme personal harm to defend abstract concepts. Third, an alarming tendency to solve problems through creative violence when diplomatic solutions are available. Recommendation: quarantine indefinitely. And so humanity had been left alone, their star system marked with the universal symbol for Forbidden Zone, their radio transmissions monitored but never answered, their existence a shameful secret the Council kept locked away. Until now. Until the Arxhole swarm had come. Vorith activated the data crystal. A holographic display materialized above the chamber floor, showing a human face. It was male, middle-aged by their standards, with dark skin and gray scattered through his short hair. He wore a simple blue uniform with a patch on the shoulder, a circle depicting a planet wrapped in olive branches. The human spoke in their dominant language, and the chamber's translation matrix rendered his words into Galactic Common. "This is Admiral Marcus Chen of the United Earth Space Command, responding to the distress signal received from the Galactic Council. We understand you are under attack by an extragalactic threat designated the Arxhole Swarm. We understand your defensive fleets have suffered catastrophic losses. We understand you are requesting military assistance." The human paused. His expression was unreadable by most species standards, but Vorith had studied the old survey files. He recognized the tightness around the eyes, the set of the jaw. The human was angry. "You kept us in a cage for 10,000 years, Chen continued. You watched us. You studied us. You never spoke to us. You treated us like animals too dangerous to touch. And now you ask for our help." Counselor Morvac of the Three-Nod Union stood, his crystalline body refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns. "This is an outrage. How dare they?" "Silence," Vorith commanded. His voice echoed through the chamber with an authority born of desperation. "Let it play." The hologram continued. Admiral Chen leaned forward slightly, and when he spoke again, his tone had changed. It was softer. Sadder. "Here's what you need to understand about humans," he said. "We don't forgive easily. We don't forget. But we also don't let people die when we can stop it. Not even people who locked us away and pretended we didn't exist." He straightened, and his expression hardened into something that made Voritha's scales prickle with instinctive alarm. The Third Fleet is already en route to your position. ETA 72 hours. We're bringing everything we have. And when we arrive, you're going to see exactly why you were so afraid of us. The transmission ended. The chamber erupted into chaos. Some counselors shouted in protest. Others demanded immediate defensive preparations. A few simply sat in stunned silence. Vorith let them argue. He was staring at the empty space where the hologram had been, replaying the human's final words in his mind. You're going to see exactly why you were so afraid of us. Counselor Zafina approached him, her elegant features drawn with worry. High Chancellor, what have we done? If the humans arrive with hostile intent. They won't, Vorith interrupted quietly. How can you be certain? Because, Vorith said, turning to face her, the human said, we don't let people die when we can stop it. Not allies. Not friends. People. Despite everything we've done to them, they still consider us people. Zafina's silver eyes widened. You think they're actually coming to help? Vorith looked out through the chamber's observation dome at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, the Arxel swarm continued its relentless advance, consuming colonies, stripping worlds, leaving nothing but lifeless rock in its wake. The Council's fleets had been shattered. Their defenses were crumbling. Hope had died 3 rotations ago. Until a human had looked into a camera and promised violence on their behalf. I think, Vorith said slowly, we are about to discover what happens when you cage a species that defines itself by protecting others. Even strangers. Even enemies. He turned back to the Council. Prepare all remaining defense stations for the arrival of the human fleet. And someone find me everything we have on human military doctrine. If they're coming to fight beside us, we need to understand how they wage war. Counselor Morvac scoffed. They've been isolated for 10 millennia. What could primitives possibly? They weren't primitive when we sealed them away, Vorith cut him off. They were already reaching for the stars with chemical rockets and nuclear weapons. They had fought global wars and survived. They had built weapons capable of destroying their own world and chose not to use them. What do you think 10,000 years of isolation has taught them, Morvac? What do you think they've been building while we pretended they didn't exist? The crystalline counselor fell silent. Vorith touched a control panel on his wrist. Open a channel. Wideband, all military frequencies. A calm officer's voice responded. Channel open, High Chancellor. Vorith took a breath. His next words would be recorded, analyzed, remembered. But they needed to be said. Attention all Council Defense Forces. This is High Chancellor Vorith. I am hereby issuing a fleet-wide directive. When the human forces arrive, you will treat them as honored allies. You will integrate with their command structure. You will follow their tactical recommendations. We ask for their help. They are giving it despite having every reason to refuse. We will not dishonor their sacrifice with pride or prejudice. Vorith out. He closed the channel and turned to face the Council one last time. 72 hours, he said. That's how long we have to hold the line. After that, we'll discover if we were right to fear them, or if we should have been grateful they existed at all. High above the chamber, through the dome's transparent surface, a star flickered and died as the Arxel swarm consumed another system. The clock was ticking. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, humanity was coming. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel exactly 71 hours and 43 minutes after Admiral Chen's transmission. They did not arrive quietly. Vorith stood on the command deck of the Council's primary defensive station, watching the tactical display as reality itself seemed to tear open. Massive spatial distortions bloomed across the sensor grid like flowers made of broken physics. Then the ships emerged. Counselor Zafina gasped beside him. By the ancestors! The human Third Fleet numbered 247 vessels. They ranged from sleek corvettes barely larger than atmospheric shuttles to massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything the Council had ever constructed. But it wasn't their size that made Voritha's twin hearts skip in synchronized fear. It was their design. Council ships were elegant, curved, built with aesthetics in mind because warfare had been a rare occurrence for the last 6,000 years. Human ships looked like they had been born in combat and had never stopped evolving. Angular hulls covered in armor plating. Weapon batteries bristling from every surface. Point defense systems that rotated with predatory alertness. No wasted space. No decorative elements. Just pure, distilled lethality. These were ships built by a species that understood violence intimately. Incoming transmission, the communications officer announced. Admiral Chen requests direct link to High Chancellor Vorith. Put him through, Vorith said. The holographic display shimmered, and Admiral Chen appeared. He looked older than in the previous recording, his face lined with exhaustion. Behind him, Vorith could see the bridge of what must be the flagship, humans moving with practiced efficiency, displays showing tactical data, the quiet intensity of professionals at work. High Chancellor, Chen said. His tone was businesslike, almost curt. Third Fleet is in position. We've analyzed the swarm's advancement pattern and identified their primary hive cluster. It's consuming the Keldrathi system, approximately 40 light-years from your position. Vorith pulled up the same data on his own display. The Keldrathi system had been home to 4 billion souls 3 rotations ago. Now it was a feeding ground. We know, Vorith said quietly. We've been unable to mount an effective defense. The swarm's ships regenerate faster than we can destroy them. Their tactics adapt within minutes of engagement. We've lost 17 fleet groups, Chen interrupted. 463 capital ships. Estimated 2 million personnel. We read your tactical logs on the way here. The humans' bluntness should have been offensive. Instead, Vorith found it strangely comforting. No pretense. No diplomatic dancing. Just facts. Yes, Vorith confirmed. Every strategy we've attempted has failed. The swarm learns too quickly. They absorb our weapons, adapt to our tactics. He paused, the admission bitter on his tongue. We're losing. Chen nodded slowly. You've been fighting them like you fight each other. Formal tactics. Predictable maneuvers. Rules of engagement. There are conventions of warfare that. The swarm doesn't care about your conventions, Chen said, cutting him off again. They're not a civilization. They're a force of nature with teeth. You can't negotiate with a hurricane, Chancellor. You can only break it or be broken by it. Vorith felt his scales prickle. And you believe you can break them? For the first time, something like a smile crossed Admiral Chen's face. It was not a comforting expression. Humans have been breaking things since we discovered fire, he said. It's what we're good at. Now, here's what's going to happen. We're going to hit the hive cluster at Keldrathi with everything we have. Not to destroy it, we can't, not yet. But to get their attention. To make them angry. And when they come after us with everything they've got, you're going to see how humans fight when we stop pretending to be civilized. Zafina stepped forward, her voice tight with concern. Admiral, that's suicide. If you provoke them, they'll focus on us instead of your colonies, Chen finished. That's the point. We draw them out. We make them chase us. And we lead them into the grinder. Vorith stared at the human, understanding dawning with cold clarity. You're using yourselves as bait. We're using ourselves as the hammer, Chen corrected. Your fleets will be the anvil. We're sending you our tactical protocols now. Study them. Share them with your commanders. And when the swarm comes screaming out of Keldrathi, be ready to do things you've never done before. Things that will seem brutal. Inefficient. Wrong. The Admiral leaned forward, and his expression hardened into something ancient and terrible. War isn't about honor, Chancellor. It's about winning. And we've had 10,000 years alone to perfect the art of winning ugly. The transmission ended. Vorith stood in silence, staring at the empty hologram. Around him, his staff processed the incoming tactical data, their expressions ranging from confusion to horror as they parsed what the humans were proposing. High Chancellor, his tactical officer said, her voice shaking slightly. These protocols, they're suggesting we target the swarm's damaged vessels specifically. To prevent regeneration. That we focus fire on crippled ships rather than fresh threats. It violates every principle of honorable combat, Morvac said, appearing on the command deck with several other counselors. To strike at wounded enemies. The swarm has no wounded, Vorith interrupted, his voice cold. They have damaged units that regenerate and return to combat within hours. The humans are right. We've been fighting with one hand tied behind our backs because we couldn't imagine a war without rules. He pulled up the human tactical doctrine on the main display. It was brutal in its efficiency. Overwhelming force concentrated on single points. Feigned retreats to draw enemy formations into kill zones. Targeted strikes on logistics and regeneration centers rather than direct fleet engagement. Scorched earth protocols if a position became untenable. It was everything the Council had spent 6,000 years of peace trying to forget. And it was exactly what they needed. Transmit these protocols to all surviving fleet commanders, Vorith ordered. Tell them we're adopting human tactical doctrine immediately. And tell them, he paused, choosing his words carefully, tell them that the humans are about to show us what it means to fight like you're already dead and decided to take the enemy with you. 40 minutes later, the human fleet moved. They didn't advance cautiously. They didn't probe the swarm's defenses. They simply accelerated to maximum velocity and crashed into the Keldrathi system like a meteor swarm made of weapons and fury. Vorith watched the battle unfold through the tactical feed, and what he witnessed would haunt his dreams for the rest of his life. The swarm met them with thousands of bioships, living vessels covered in chitinous armor, firing organic weapons that could dissolve shields and corrupt ship systems. The Council's fleets had been overwhelmed by the sheer adaptability of these creatures. They learned. They evolved. They turned every weapon used against them into a strength. The humans didn't care. Their opening salvo was nuclear. Not antimatter, which the swarm had learned to deflect. Not plasma, which they could absorb. Simple, primitive fusion warheads, hundreds of them, launched simultaneously, each one targeted at a different bioship. The swarm's organic shields were designed for energy weapons. The nuclear detonations were kinetic events wrapped in radiation and heat. The bioships couldn't adapt fast enough. 37 swarm vessels simply ceased to exist in the first 10 seconds. But the humans weren't done. While the swarm reeled from the nuclear assault, human corvettes, small, fast, suicidal, dove into the enemy formation. They didn't fire weapons. They rammed. Their hulls were packed with antimatter charges set on deadman triggers. Each corvette that made contact with a bioship became a miniature supernova. They're sacrificing their own ships, Zafina whispered, horrified. Their own crews. Look at the crew manifests, Vorith said quietly, pulling up the data. The corvettes are drone ships. Automated. The humans put their artificial intelligence into missiles and aimed them at the enemy's heart. On the tactical display, the swarm began to react. Their bioships adapted, reinforcing shields, changing formation, attempting to counter the human assault with the same learning algorithms that had devastated the Council's fleets. And that's when the humans showed their true cruelty. They changed tactics. The nuclear assault stopped. The ramming corvettes pulled back. Instead, the human dreadnoughts opened up with weapons the Council had never seen, railguns firing projectiles at relativistic speeds, energy lances that punched through shields like they weren't there, and something the humans called Hellfire missiles, that didn't just destroy ships but set space itself burning with some kind of chemical reaction that couldn't exist in vacuum but somehow did anyway. The swarm tried to adapt. But every time they countered one tactic, the humans switched to another. There was no pattern. No doctrine. Just constant, creative violence delivered with mechanical precision. Vorith understood then. The humans weren't fighting to win this battle. They were teaching the swarm that adaptation meant nothing against an enemy that refused to be predictable. They were teaching the swarm to fear. High Chancellor, his censor officer said, voice tight with alarm. The swarm is disengaging from Keldrothi. The entire hive cluster is moving. Where? Vorith demanded. The officer's hands shook as she highlighted the trajectory on the display. Toward the human fleet. All of them. Every ship in the system. Vorith's blood went cold. How many? 4,362 bioships. They're abandoning the planet. The humans have made them angry enough to stop feeding and start hunting. On the display, Admiral Chen's flagship broadcast a single message to all Council forces, Anvil positions. Now. The cage closes Dr. Sarah Okonkwo stood in the observation deck of Lunar Station Alpha, staring at the stars that humanity would never reach. The alien probes had appeared 6 months ago, sleek, silent machines that had surveyed Earth's solar system with clinical precision. They had studied human broadcasts, sampled Earth's atmosphere, catalogued every satellite and space station. Then they had erected the quarantine veil. It wasn't a physical barrier. It was something worse. A network of gravitational manipulation devices positioned at the edge of the solar system, creating a field that made faster-than-light travel impossible within a radius of 2 light-years. Humanity's primitive fusion drives could theoretically reach the barrier in centuries, but they could never cross it. The aliens had left a single message, broadcast in every human language: you are unsafe. You will remain here until you prove otherwise. Do not attempt to leave. Do not attempt communication. You are being observed. That had been 3 weeks ago. Now Sarah watched as the emergency session of the newly formed United Earth Assembly debated their options on every screen across the solar system. Politicians argued. Scientists theorized. Military commanders proposed futile assaults on technology they didn't understand. Sarah's assistant, Dr. James Chen, approached with 2 coffee bulbs. They're still talking in circles, he said, handing her one. Half want to try breaking through the barrier. The other half want to send peaceful messages proving we're not dangerous. Both are pointless, Sarah said quietly. The aliens made their decision. They're not negotiating. They're not listening. They put us in a box and walked away. So what do we do? Sarah took a sip of coffee, her eyes never leaving the stars. We accept that we're alone. And we prepare. Prepare for what? For the day they realize they made a mistake, she said. For the day something out there becomes dangerous enough that they need us. Or for the day we become strong enough that they can't ignore us anymore. James stared at her. Sarah, that could take generations, she interrupted. Centuries. Millennia, maybe. I know. She turned to face him, and her expression was iron. But humans don't give up, James. We adapt. We endure. And we remember. The aliens think they've caged us. They've actually just given us time to evolve. Year 247, the first revolution. Admiral Marcus Chen stood before the holographic display of Earth's solar system, watching the fruits of 2.5 centuries of preparation. That he was the great-great-grandson of Dr. James Chen, and he carried his ancestors' legacy in every decision he made. The United Earth Space Command, formed in year 12 after the old nations finally dissolved their borders, now controlled the most extensive military network humanity had ever built, but it wasn't on Earth. Status report, Marcus commanded. Commander Williams pulled up the data. The outer belt fortifications are at 93% completion. We now have 472 weapons platforms positioned throughout the asteroid belt, each capable of independent operation for up to 50 years. Mars colony production exceeding projections. The subterranean manufacturing complexes are producing 6 new frigates per month. Current fleet strength is 812 vessels, all equipped with the new fusion pulse drive system. Marcus nodded, studying the display. Earth's solar system had been transformed. The moon was no longer just a research station, it was a shipyard and military academy. Mars had been terraformed just enough to support underground cities housing 3 million people, all dedicated to ship construction and weapons research. The asteroid belt had become a minefield of automated defense platforms, and beyond Neptune, in the cold darkness of the outer system, humanity had built something the aliens would never detect: the deep space foundries, massive construction facilities powered by harvested ice and sustained fusion reactions, building ships that never came close enough to Earth for the alien monitoring systems to notice. Any response from the quarantine veil? Marcus asked. Negative, sir. The barrier remains active. The alien monitoring stations continue their passive observation. As far as they're concerned, we're still primitive natives playing with chemical rockets. Marcus smiled grimly. Good. Let them keep thinking that. How many ships in the Shadow Fleet now? Williams hesitated. Sir, that's classified at level, I have clearance, Commander. Yes, sir. 1,423 vessels. All stationed beyond the orbit of Pluto. All equipped with experimental antimatter drives. All invisible to standard detection methods. 1,000 ships that the aliens didn't know existed. An entire fleet built in the darkness, crewed by volunteers who had signed on knowing they might never see Earth again, all preparing for a war that might never come. Or might come tomorrow. The Council thinks they're observing us, Marcus said quietly. They think they know what we're capable of. They have no idea that every restriction they placed on us just made us more creative. He pulled up a file marked Project Prometheus, humanity's most ambitious undertaking yet. Plans for ships that could cross interstellar space without faster-than-light travel, generation vessels that could sustain human populations for centuries, sent out into the galaxy through vectors the quarantine veil couldn't monitor. If humanity couldn't leave through the front door, they'd build back doors the aliens would never see. Initiate Phase 7 of Prometheus, Marcus ordered. It's time to start seeding colony ships toward Alpha Centauri. Slow routes. Generational vessels. If we can't break the cage, we'll dig tunnels under it. Sir, that will take thousands of years. I know. Marcus turned from the display. But our ancestors didn't build all this expecting us to finish the job. They built it so their descendants would have options. We're doing the same. He looked out through the observation port at the distant stars, still out of reach, still taunting humanity with their inaccessibility. The aliens wanted to keep us contained until we proved we weren't dangerous, he said. They're going to learn that the most dangerous thing you can do to humans is give us a common enemy and unlimited time to prepare. Year 3891, the technological singularity Dr. Yuki Tanaka existed in 3 states simultaneously. Her biological body floated in a neural interface pod aboard Ganymede Research Station. Her consciousness extended through quantum-linked networks across the entire solar system. And her digital avatar stood in a virtual space where the greatest minds of humanity, both biological and artificial, gathered to solve impossible problems. The year was 3891 post-quarantine, and humanity had changed. The veil analysis is complete, announced Archimedes, one of the 13 ascended intelligences that had evolved from humanity's artificial intelligence research. Its avatar appeared as a geometric construct of pure light and mathematics. Yuki's avatar turned toward it. Show me. The virtual space transformed into a 3-dimensional model of the quarantine veil. Over nearly 4,000 years, humanity had studied every aspect of the barrier. They understood its gravitational manipulation principles. They knew its power sources. They had even identified weaknesses. We can break it, Archimedes said. We've been able to break it for approximately 732 years. But we haven't, Yuki said. Correct. The consensus remains, breaking the veil would alert the Galactic Council to our true capabilities. Better they continue believing we're primitives who accepted our cage. Yuki nodded, her digital form processing data at speeds her biological brain could never achieve. The neural interface technology had advanced to the point where the line between human and machine was becoming philosophical rather than practical. What's the current status of Project Exodus? She asked. Another avatar materialized, Dr. Hassan Al-Rahman, one of the few pure biologicals who still participated in the high-level research councils. The generation ships are performing beyond expectations. We now have 17 colony missions en route to systems within 50 light-years. Travel time ranges from 8,000 to 15,000 years, but the ships are self-sustaining. Humanity will reach the stars eventually, even if we have to do it the slow way. And the veil won't detect them. The ships are using conventional fusion drives, traveling at sublight speeds through vectors that avoid the veil's monitoring network. To the aliens, they'll look like comets or debris if they're detected at all. Yuki's biological body smiled in its pod. Our ancestors would be proud. They spent 2 centuries building the foundation. We've spent 4 millennia perfecting it. The question remains, Archimedes said, its geometric form shifting through complex patterns. What do we do with these capabilities? Do we remain hidden? Do we eventually break the veil? Do we wait for the aliens to release us? Yuki considered the question that had haunted humanity for 4,000 years. We wait, she said finally. Not because we're patient. But because we're strategic. The aliens put us here because they feared what we could become. Every year we wait, we become stronger. Every generation, we become more unified. When the time comes, whether they release us or we break free, they'll discover they didn't cage a dangerous species. She paused, her consciousness touching the vast networks of human achievement spread across the solar system. They caged a species that turned isolation into evolution. And when we finally emerge, the galaxy will never be the same. Year 7234, the warning ignored. High researcher Vorith reviewed the monitoring data from Observation Post Terra 7, the automated station that had watched Earth's solar system for over 7,000 years. The data was concerning. The humans are building something in their outer system, his assistant noted. The energy signatures are increasing. Vorith examined the readings. Yes, there were anomalies. Heat signatures near the orbit of their 8th planet. Occasional gravitational fluctuations that might indicate large-scale construction. Radio emissions that seemed more organized than their early chaotic broadcasts, but nothing conclusive. Nothing that suggested the primitives had developed faster-than-light capability. Nothing that threatened the quarantine veil's integrity. File it in the standard report, Vorith said, dismissing the data. The humans are probably building more of their crude space stations. They've been doing that for millennia. As long as they don't approach the veil, they're not our concern. Sir, some of the energy signatures are quite large. If they're developing antimatter technology, then they're doing it within their cage, Vorith interrupted. The veil prevents FTL travel. They can build whatever they want in their little solar system. They're not going anywhere. The assistant hesitated. Should we at least update the council? The quarantine has been in effect for 7,000 years. Perhaps it's time to reevaluate. The evaluation was clear, Vorith said firmly. Humans are psychologically unsuited for galactic civilization. They're violent, unpredictable, and form irrational emotional attachments. The quarantine remains in effect until they demonstrate fundamental behavioral change. He closed the file, marking it as routine surveillance data. Besides, he added, we have more important concerns. The Outer Rim colonies are reporting increased piracy. The Keldrathi trade dispute requires mediation. The Council has no time to worry about primitives who can't even leave their own star. The report was filed, catalogued, and forgotten. On Earth, in a command center buried 3 kilometers beneath the lunar surface, Admiral Jessica Okonkwo Chen, descendant of both the Chen and Okonkwo lines, read the same surveillance data from humanity's own monitoring of the alien observation posts. "They're still not paying attention," she reported to the United Earth Assembly. "We could probably build a Dyson sphere around the sun and they'd file it as primitive energy collection." "Good," the Assembly President replied. "Then we proceed with Phase 12. Begin construction of the Dreadnought-class vessels. I want the fleet at 10,000 combat-ready ships within 2 centuries. Understood, Madam President. And the generation ships? Continue the program. 43 missions are now en route to various systems. By the time the aliens finally pay attention to us, humans will already be established on a dozen worlds outside their precious veil." Jessica smiled. "We've been in this cage for 7,000 years. They think we've accepted it. They don't realize we've been turning it into a fortress." "Let them keep thinking that," the president said. "Because when the day comes that they need us, and that day will come, they're going to learn that humanity doesn't forget being caged. And we definitely don't forgive."